everyone. It is 10:01, and I will call the special meeting of the City Council to order. Will the clerk please call the roll? I caught the clerk off guard.
Councilor Heller?
Here.
Councilor Eber?
Here.
Councilor Holen?
Here.
Councilor McGuire?
Here.
Councilor Robinson?
Here.
Councilor Fisher?
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, before we have a couple of items of business that we're going to take care of today, but before we dive into that, as I'm sure you are all aware, there was a very tragic fatality accident at the intersection of Bellevue and Franklin yesterday. As you also all know, there's been a lot of community feedback about this intersection, and we had scheduled for the March 17th meeting a discussion, and there was going to be a proposal at that time for the city to conduct a more current warrant study. If there are no objections, I would like for the council to direct staff to move forward with that now, rather than waiting till March 17th. Are there any objections to that approach?
Move forward with
Conducting a warrant study and to coordinate a traffic warrant study at that intersection, and to direct staff to coordinate with Greenwood Village.
Mayor, just a question. Do we know the Greenwood Village had a council meeting last night?
They did not discuss it.
They did not discuss it. Okay. And do we know that they, in your conversations or in Chris's conversations with Greenwood Village, that they intend to pursue warrant study?
I do not know for sure what they intend. And so I think this was going to be something that we were going to consider anyway. I think we should, I suspect they will do something, but I don't want to speak for them because they haven't discussed it yet. So that's the coordinate with Greenwood Village part of this discussion. But I think that we were going to discuss it on the 17th. I feel like a discussion at this time is emotionally sensitive, and I think it's difficult to have a conversation where all the voices are heard in such a tense, emotional moment. But I think people were generally supportive of that plan of action, and so I think that we can just move that up. The warrant study has to occur while school is still in session, so we don't really have time to.
And to clarify one other thing on the warrant study, it is basically, this is not the right terminology, but it is basically expired, the one that was done prior.
Yes.
So before anything could be done anyway, because you need CDOT approval for any action, an updated warrant study is going to be whatever first step of whatever happens.
Well, a couple of questions. First of all, and I agree with that with regard to the warrant study, but will the warrant study, which is going to be a traffic volume type of a study associated with it, but the warrants could change as a result of this accident, correct?
Correct.
I don't know.
Traffic
That's what
accidents
a
are a data
warrant
point.
study would figure out. That's part of the warrant study. They factor in all that data.
Okay, so that's me. Now, I want to understand what you mean by coordinate with Greenwood Village.
Before you go,
okay?
can I just, well, it's a scope question, just to get to your first question. I'm too in favor,
Yeah,
but does the warrant?
I just want to, I don't want to go past this coordination thing here.
Okay,
Okay, because I think that's important, which is to go, I agree, Cherry Hills Village should go ahead and do this, just like we said before, and the issue is we'll communicate with them, but it's not a joint study. So is that what you mean by coordinate?
it's not a what?
It's not a joint study with Greenwood Village. We're going to do our own study.
Whether or not the warrant study in particular is done in cooperation with Greenwood Village, I don't know, because I don't know if they're planning on doing that. It is not what I would call a joint traffic study that would factor in a lot of other elements. A warrant study is and I would refer to Director Goldie, it's a pretty specific study that is conducted to meet CDOT standards.
Correct. It's a study specific to the warrant for a traffic signal, not anything else. It's a.
Right.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
I would just say,
Let's not move
on.
past that. Let's just,
Yeah,
let's
hold
just stay there for a sec. No,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Okay, so I think that in coordinating with Greenwood Village, the conversations that I have had with Greenwood Village prior, over the last several months, was that my initial concern was that if Cherry Hills Village did our own warrant study that came back with different information, I felt like that would put us in a difficult position where Greenwood Village's study said one thing and Cherry Hills Village's study said another. I think the landscape has changed as a result of yesterday. I think we need to move forward with a warrant study. If Greenwood Village is also planning on doing that, then I think we should work together on that. If they're not planning on doing that, then they can do their own thing.
Just hang on, okay?
Okay,
You guys will get your chance. I want to deal with this warrant study thing here, and in terms of that, okay? The issue is this, I don't disagree with what you said. What I do disagree with is that then there will be absolute ensuring that there will be no manipulation of the warrant study. And we can't control what Greenwood Village does in that regard. We can control what we do in terms of making sure that it is done in a proper manner and that it is not manipulated like the last one does. And to the extent that coordinating with Greenwood Village would put that in jeopardy, then I would not be in favor of it.
Okay, that's a fair point.
and I think that we will have an opportunity to make, knowing the additional information and feedback that we got from residents about their coordinated efforts with the previous one, we have discussed some strategies. I'm not going to discuss those here. Some strategies to limit or mitigate those potential efforts. I will just also say, in response to the coordination question, this direction to staff is really two parts. One is to initiate the warrant study, maybe with Greenwood Village's help, and if not, we'll on our own. The second part is for us to, and when I say us, I mean specifically staff, to work with the Greenwood Village staff on evaluating next steps. Over the past few months, Greenwood Village has not had a lot of discussion on the issue. We don't know where they stand. So this direction is for us to actively go work with them to talk about what options might exist and see where it goes from there. It's not a specific direction that staff shall do step one, plan B, and outcome C.
And that would be perfectly fine, and that is fine. But the other thing is that I can't speak for Greenwood Village staff, I can't speak for our staff, but my guess is they're the same thing. Staffs are very responsive and pay a lot of attention to where they think the direction of councils want to go. And they do a very good job. Ours certainly does a very good job of that. And at the end of the day, to the extent that Greenwood Village has got a different view or whatever, and their staffs are responding that way, that of course will put pressure on our staffs, et cetera, and you'll have to deal with that. So that makes your job, could conceivably make your job a bit harder, because I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in being responsive.
Yes.
I think everything the mayor said is absolutely right, agree with that 100%. But again, done in a manner that our staff would typically have done had they not been coordinating.
I would just say that I hear what you're saying about it making it harder. If council does not give us direction to do a specific traffic study, that makes it easier, because then we have that opportunity to evaluate Cherry Hills Village's needs.
I
So that's
think-
why a coordination provides us with the necessary flexibility to execute what you just mentioned.
Yes, I think coordinating, when I used that word, and maybe communicating is a better word, is just to understand For our staff, the city of Cherry Hills Village is going to move forward in the path that we feel is most prudent for the residents of the city of Cherry Hills Village. To the extent that there is, and Greenwood Village is going to do the same, to the extent that there is overlap in those efforts, we should work together on those. And to the extent that there's not overlap, then they need to do their thing and we need to do ours. That's what I meant by that.
So just a comment here. So I think given what happened yesterday, it's very prudent and wise that we expedite this and move forward and coordinate with Greenwood Village on the warrant study. The warrant study, though, just gives us one option. We still have to look at and determine, are there other options that could improve safety or other things? We're just not necessarily saying we're going to, even if the warrant study approves a light, that we're going to do that. We're not making that decision now.
That is
We're just
fair, yes.
saying we're going to move forward and evaluate whether a light is an option.
Yes.
But it's not all the options that are on the table.
That's correct, and it's not, you're right, I think it's an important point that you're right, that this is not saying if a warrant is met, we're committing to doing anything, but because CDOT ultimately controls that intersection, we don't even, I don't want people operating under the assumption that things are possible when in fact they aren't. And so I think that the warrant study is a starting point to understand
The alternatives, what's that?
whether the where the discussion needs to begin and not sort of give people false, I don't want to say false hope, but false information, about what is possible and what's not. Counselor Fisher, did you have a?
So, yes,
Oh,
thank
sorry.
you.
I'll come back to you.
My question is more sort of to clarify, I'm looking at Director Goldie. So my understanding from a lot of the public comment over the last 6 months or so has been that CDOT was more involved with the study that warranted a light.
That's not true. Greenwood
No,
Village.
Greenwood did
study.
the study and they
But
turned the study
into-
over to CDOT.
And CDOT said, okay, a light
Yep.
is warranted. Okay, thank you, that's what I thought. And so then it was sort of also what City Manager Kramer mentioned, and then we also heard a lot of comments about people knowing that this was happening and possibly trying to drive or not drive and that sort of
Yes,
thing.
manipulate the data.
Manipulate the results. So I guess just sort of for the record, how do you make sure that your study, that your new study, right?
Yeah, the city manager referred to that, and we don't want to reveal those.
We can have
There
an
are
offline
mechanisms, but
No,
we,
I understand,
that's,
but you do, but we work with CDOT, no?
No,
no,
we will do our own.
Okay,
Yeah, CDOT won't have anything to do with our study.
Does CDOT do their own study?
no,
They'll just look at our results.
They'll look at our results.
yes.
That's all they look at. That's their only role as far as the warrant study process. If a warrant study, if they authorize it and the jurisdictions then fund it and both agree to it, then they get much more involved. But they don't really spend a lot of time until it becomes real.
okay. But you can't put in a light unless you have a study that warrants it.
Correct.
Correct.
Correct. CDOT has full control
And
over
a light is
that.
just one possible
That's
solution.
one
Yeah.
option.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
And I guess to that point, there is a cost. It is not a significant cost. I don't think we have an exact number, but order of magnitude, $10,000 or less. And so by directing staff to do that, we are sort of directing them that they're, to spend that money. And so just to make sure. Counselor Heller, yes.
Yeah, first, apologies for interrupting, or attempting to interrupt, because you didn't let me. Yeah, it was really on your first question on scope, and Doug touched on it a little bit. Traffic light is what the warrant study will be about, but pedestrian safety wasn't the issue yesterday, but it has been over time. Does the warrant look at, in the context of a traffic light, pedestrian safety? And if not, then
Well,
it's
the
one of the
warrant-
items I think that Doug raised.
The
That
warrant looks at pedestrian numbers. There will not be a warrant that is met for pedestrians at that intersection.
Not enough people, yeah.
Not enough people. But if a traffic light is warranted and it goes in, CDOT makes sure that that traffic light is also the safety for pedestrians. So there'll be
That makes
marked
perfect sense, Jay.
crosswalks, there'll be
Yep.
everything for pedestrians, but the scope would then be, there, I don't know, I don't want to say anything wrong, but pedestrians are not going to be anything that meets that warrant. That would be
Understood.
something that the cities would try to figure out, what can we do?
Yeah.
Jay, it's fair to say, if the traffic numbers warrant a traffic signal, CDOT will ensure that the highest level of pedestrian facilities are included with the traffic signal design.
Yes.
Yes.
So it would become a pedestrian
Yes.
crossing.
Correct,
It would,
exactly.
yes.
So the
Just like-
question that
just
comes
like
in,
Lily.
again, Doug raised it, the
Yeah.
opposite. If for either the warrant is a negative, or, to your point, Mayor, we decide not to act on
Yeah.
it, there still is the issue, we may not act on it either, of pedestrian safety. That's been raised.
Right.
can
Okay,
I-
so,
yeah,
yes, Councilor
sorry.
McGuire. Yep.
I've been sitting here
Yes,
quietly as much as I can. Okay, I have a couple of questions and a couple of concerns. I am concerned about what coordination means, and if it's just we're communicating with them, I'm fine with that. But to me, when you say coordination, it sounds like you're making decisions, and I want to be clear, we're not suggesting that you do that. I do think our concerns in terms of what happens at this light is unique and different from the concerns that Greenwood Village has in terms of what happens at that intersection. And so for that reason, I think we do need to be careful that we're keeping in our lane and they're keeping in, no pun intended, in their lane. And with respect to a warrant study, I think it should not be something that we do with them. I think we need to do our own because of the, and I'll call them allegations because we have no idea really what happened, but because people raised concerns about when the study was being conducted, being told to people and people then trying to manipulate. Now, whether that happened or not, I don't know, but I think the only way we can be sure that that doesn't happen is if we do our own. So, and I've heard about some of the methods you've talked about to make sure that doesn't happen, and I think those are very good ideas. I wanted to ask a question because I thought you said no light would go in without us doing a warrant study. And I thought with respect to the light at Cherry Hills Country Club, there wasn't a warrant study done on that, and that it was because of the death at the intersection, an older man leaving the
So-
club. But can you address that?
That went above. Somebody talked to CDOT from the country club and got an okay to put that light in. The city was not involved in that. The city managed the project for the golf course because CDOT didn't want to deal with a private entity. But that one, I believe, was political, and somebody went somewhere with the state and got the light.
Well, political, maybe, it's a unique intersection in that one organization, right? One development is really the prime beneficiary of that. So it's not necessarily a village-wide kind of issue.
Really, two, because that
Yeah,
very
the other
exclusive
neighborhood.
Yeah.
neighborhood across the street.
They're both private entrances.
But they're private entrances, and so that does change the dynamic. It's not apples to apples with this intersection.
So I thought there was one thing relating to the warrant studies that dealt with either accidents at the intersection or deaths at the intersection or injuries. What's that piece of the warrant study?
So there are a number of legs to the warrant study. There's warrants based on volume, warrants based on accident history, warrants based on pedestrian history. So there are a number of things that are looked at in the warrant. Only one of those has to be met to warrant a stoplight. But I can send you the whole.
Yeah, and I think
Chapter
you've
on the
actually sent it before.
MUTCD.
I would like to
Yeah.
see it again. But the fact that there's been 2 deaths at that intersection, now one was pedestrian, one was a car accident. Does that meet a warrant automatically?
Off the top of my head, I would have to look up
Okay.
what.
We
the
have to
ex-
conduct the study,
what
but
the
it will
estimate-
certainly factor in. I mean, it's.
Yeah, that's a data point for the safety warrant. So that's one of the categories, right?
Yes, and that, to be
So-
clear, that is the safety warrant component, and when people came to present to council, that was the distinction that the previous warrant study was not granted on on the basis of safety.
Right.
It was granted on the basis of volume. That may be different now. And it may not, I don't know all of the factors that go into it, but certainly accidents and deaths at an intersection are a component of the warrant study. And that's yet another reason why, I mean, we were already planning on presenting this idea to council. But I think, you know, the events, the very tragic events of yesterday just gives more credence to that approach that we need to do this study again. I mean, not only has it been too long, not only were there allegations that the data was manipulated, but now the situation is different as well. So,
Mayor, if I
yeah,
can.
Councilor Eber.
I want to just jump in and second the comments of Councilor Robinson in terms of the idea of, you know, I think the warrant needs to go forward, the study needs to go forward, but I think that there are a number of potential options, if any option. I don't think it's limited only to the light. And I think that if we are going to end up doing something at that area, it brings up some questions also of kind of jumping on a look of whether or not, even if it meets certain criteria, whether or not it is our only place. I mean, it almost brings up some questions for us looking at our interests as a village, whether or not, although there have been 2 tragic instances there, whether or not it is our highest priority location or others. But I think that the first step, I agree with Councilor Robinson, that we need to look at all the options that may be available there and not just only look at a light.
I agree, and I think that that's why I'm saying, you know, where I think we are not in a different, I mean, yesterday's events were now are added into this mix, but we had a plan, and I think our plan was a good one, and it's still a good one. And I think we need to proceed with that. And that was to basically say, you know, we need to address what is the real picture that we're looking at. And then there does still potentially need to be a discussion about all of the feedback we've received on both sides of the issue and all of that. I think that right now is just a particularly insensitive time to have that discussion. And I think we need the data anyway. And so I think, you know, moving forward, this is a first step, and having that bigger discussion at a later date is what I'm proposing, so.
One more question that I meant to ask that I don't think. So Jay, CDOT can't come in at this intersection and unilaterally say we're putting a light in, or can they do that?
They could, yes.
Could do that, okay.
They haven't, but if it were
No,
a
no, I
safety
know.
issue, if it is a safety issue, that would be a very
But,
different
yeah,
picture.
they
I mean,
might.
but even without a warrant study, could they say, based on the second accident, we're going to put a light in?
I don't, they would follow their own warrants.
Okay,
They wouldn't just jump in and do it to do it. They would follow their own warrants
okay.
to make sure it was
Okay, thank you.
needed.
Okay, so did you have another comment, or?
Yeah, no, just, I agree. I was inclined, because I knew this was on the agenda for the next meeting, but I do think we've heard from enough citizens from both our city and from Greenwood Village that I do think it's time that we at least look at it. So, I agree.
Okay. So it sounds like there are no objections, and so we will direct staff to, 1, proceed with the warrant study, and 2, I guess I'm going to say, communicate and coordinate with Greenwood Village to the extent that they are pursuing the same things that we're pursuing. But to Councilor McGuire's point, how do people feel about the warrant study? Do you think that we should just do that on our own?
Yes.
I've already stated, I think we ought to do it on our own. I
Okay.
was comfortable with the insurance, et cetera, but I put it in the way that I do, which is to put it back on staff, which is to go, then you need to ensure that it's not manipulated, which then would be an appropriate thing for staff to come back and go, well, I can't do that. That would be okay to say, in which case then we go back to doing it on our own. To the extent you can assure that we don't have any issues, I wouldn't object to that. But if I was sitting in your position, I'd go, well, that's an unreasonable assurance, and I won't do it. And then I go,
I
you
would-
got to do it on your own. Now, do you see what I'm saying? It's like a,
I don't want it done in coordination with them. I want us to do our own.
Okay.
but and I'm fine with
A
that.
little differently. I feel
Okay.
like if we can assure that it's not manipulated and that it's straightforward, why wouldn't we coordinate with
That's
them
where I
and do
am.
it?
It's the
That's
staff to say
the
that.
most efficient and best way to do it. We just need to
Yeah.
make sure that it's not manipulated, that it's valid, and that we can stand behind it.
Let's be clear, we will do every effort we can to minimize attempts to manipulate it.
Yes, yes.
We are not making any promises that that will be 100% successful. I would just say is whether we do this in concert with Greenwood Village or not, I can safely say that the attempts to manipulate it will likely be no different whether we coordinate with them or not. I think we will be able to effectively run the warrant study in such a way with Greenwood Village that we would have the same safeguards in place either way.
I mean, I think, I don't think there's any risk of saying this. I think part of the issue is that the dates of the warrant study that Greenwood Village conducted were made public to, and the mechanisms and everything were made public to Cherry Hill, or to Greenwood Village residents. And I think that what we're basically saying, I mean, we can just come out and say it, is that that can't be the case this time. And if that's the way Greenwood Village wants to approach it, which I do not think it is this time around, but if it is, then that obviously is a conflict with our objectives. But that's kind of what we're talking about. Councilor Heller, I see you.
Yeah, so
yeah.
I'm in favor of coordinating, but giving staff the authority to, work the relationship. Mayor, you didn't use the term, but I liked what you said overall. I think you described a Venn diagram where we're aligned, we ought to work with them, and where we have separate interests, we ought to, respect our own interests as they will.
Okay. Okay, well, that's great. Thank you for that. I think that's consensus there. We'll move on to the next item of business, which is the agreement for professional services with Tischler Bice for a nexus study for land dedication and fee in lieu of land dedication.
Good morning, Madam Mayor and members of council. Move this so I can see all your bright faces this morning. The next item on your agenda, there are two items that are sort of related. One is the approval for the contract for the nexus study for Tischler Bice. The other is a supplemental appropriation to fund the cost for that study. So I have put together one presentation for both. And so if you have questions related to either, this is the presentation to ask them. But there are two separate motions on the motion slide, one to approve the contract and one to approve the supplemental appropriation. I'm sure that council recalls that in December of last year, council approved a 9-month moratorium on the submittal and processing of subdivision applications. Excuse me, this moratorium was enacted to allow staff time to secure a consultant to perform a current evaluation of our land dedication and fee in lieu thereof requirement associated with subdivisions. Since the moratorium went into effect, myself and Manager Black have been coordinating with Tischler Bice on the scope of services and the cost for the scope of services in the packet before you this morning. I do want to note for council that the Manager Black and I do intend to include the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Parks, Trails, and Open Space, Parks, Trails, and Recreation Commission more than is shown in the scope of services. Again, that scope of services is specific to what Tischler Bice will perform. Manager Black and I have intentions and plan to do more in-house with the PTRC and the Planning and Zoning Commission rather than pay the consultant to do that. We felt like that was a more efficient use of taxpayer dollars. So before you today is the negotiated contract with Tischler Bice and the scope of services, and the Council Bill 2, Series 2026, which is the requested supplemental appropriation of $40,888 to pay for their services. This is a not-to-exceed amount, so the contract will not go more than that. And we plan to hit the ground running with Tischler Bice, assuming
approval of the contract and the supplemental appropriation. And according to the scope of services, it's intended to take about 4 months. As I noted just a moment ago, there are two motions before you, one approving the contract and one approving the supplemental appropriation. That concludes our brief presentation, but we certainly are available for questions if you have any.
So I have one question, and every time we approve these consulting agreements, I just realize I'm in the wrong business. Do you have a sense of how much money the city has gotten as fee in lieu? I don't want to spend $40,000 to come up with a policy that gets us $500 a year for the next 20 years, right? I mean, so some gut sense that this is going to make financial sense?
It has been a lot of years since we've gotten cash in lieu of for a subdivision.
Okay.
Not Calkins.
I was going
that
to say the
all-
last one that the village did was 10 years ago, which was the Calkins, and that was a land dedication.
That was land dedication. It's been a long time since we've gotten any cash in lieu of, so I couldn't say comfortably that we could repay that
Okay.
I mean, the reality
in
is
any manner.
if council didn't think it made financial sense, the reasonable next step would be to evaluate whether or not to have the fee in lieu of land dedication.
Right, I mean, it would just have to be, there's no dedication.
There's no fee.
I mean,
That's right.
So I do get that, but I did, when I saw the number, I did pause for a moment to think.
See, I saw the number and I thought, well, that's not bad.
No, I know it's not bad, but it made me wonder how much money are we spending 40 to get one? I mean,
The broadest answer to your question is very rarely do we get a cash in lieu of land dedication.
and it's not, I guess it's not just cash in lieu, because it's also
Right.
land.
Correct.
I mean, the
land
value
is
of
about right.
land and/or cash. Just want to make sure that we all have a sense in our mind that it's worth it. Yeah, Councilor Robinson.
Can you just remind us the RFP process, Tischler Bice, are they a firm in Colorado? Are they national? Do they have experience with this? Why did you choose them? Were there other proposals? Just some more detail on that would be helpful.
Thank you for the question. Because of the moratorium, we did not go through a traditional RFP process, right? The RFP process is often a months-long process because of the time constraints of the moratorium. We did not have that luxury. Tischler Bice is a firm based out of Washington, D.C. They do this type of study all across the country for all different size communities. They have a number of clients here in Colorado that are either previous or current clients that they are performing some version of a Nexus study for. They're particularly well respected. They're nationally known. They have a reputation for providing excellent work.
And Director Workman, my understanding is that they just have recently done some studies for some neighboring communities
Correct.
along this line.
That's
Right.
correct.
So they're definitely are well-known for doing this in the state of Colorado.
As I mentioned, they have some previous clients and current clients here in Colorado that they're doing similar work for.
And are they able to, one final question, sorry, Earl. They're able to operate within our time frame. What's your expectation for a study? Maybe that was in there.
No, that's my
just said
question,
4
so go
months.
ahead.
Yeah, the anticipated project schedule is 4 months. That was presented by Tischler Bice. We have no reason to believe that they wouldn't be able to meet that timeline, especially since some of the in-house work between Manager Black and myself are being done between the Planning and Zoning Commission and PTRC. We feel confident in that timeframe.
And our timeline is, because 9 months is on the moratorium, which puts us into September, right?
Correct.
We'll have to deal with that. And so the point is you'll have that information in a timely fashion such that then, because there's stuff that staff will
Correct.
do, and then those presentations to council, and it'll all be done in a manner that timely will be able to act
By
by the
End of July,
moratorium
yeah.
deadline.
Correct. The timing works out nice with the 9-month moratorium. The 4 months gives us time to do the study as well as bring any changes that may be necessary to council for your consideration within the municipal code.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Councilor Robinson.
So am I correct in understanding that the property on University that kind of brought this to a head, that under the formula that we currently have, that was about an $80,000 amount of?
Just, I'm hesitant to get into specifics for that particular request. That is on a future council agenda. It's going to Planning and Zoning Commission next week. So I'm hesitant to get into specifics. What I would
Under
offer.
our current policy, it was a lot more than that.
With that,
more than
with the
$40,000.
with the current dedication requirement, it was in the six figures.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'll just, since we're talking about this, I will just say, normally at the retreat, we wouldn't call a special meeting in the middle of a retreat. We would normally just do this at a later date. The reason we called this special meeting today was really so that we could have the executive session related to our next topic, which is the cell service discussion. And since we had that already scheduled as a special meeting, knowing that we had the moratorium clock ticking, we thought we might as well just be efficient with our time. This is very unusual for us to sort of do our retreat this way. So hopefully everybody understands we're really trying to be very diligent with meeting the moratorium, and we don't have to do any extensions.
All right, if there are no other questions, I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve the agreement for professional services with Tischler
Vice.
for an amount not to exceed $40,880, contingent on the passage of Council Bill 2, Series 2026. I further move to authorize the city attorney to make changes as may be needed to correct any non-material errors of language or to negotiate such changes to the agreement as may be appropriate and do not substantially increase the obligation of the city, and to authorize the mayor to sign such agreement when in final form.
Second?
That's been moved and seconded, and I didn't give the city clerk time to give me my Cliff's Notes, so I'm going to guess that this is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And next,
I move to approve on first reading Council Bill 2, Series 2026, a bill for an ordinance of the City of Cherry Hills Village, amending the 2026 budget by approving a supplemental appropriation for the Nexus study.
and this is a second,
Second.
and this is a roll call.
Counselor Heller?
Yes.
Counselor Eber?
Aye.
Counselor Holland?
Aye.
Counselor McGuire?
Aye.
Counselor Robinson?
Yes.
Counselor Fisher?
Aye.
That also passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to our next item of business, which is a history and update on cell coverage efforts to date. We are going to have an executive session after this, but so much has transpired on this event, and different people have different levels of exposure to that we thought it would be best to start with a overview of that process. So I will turn that over to Director Goldie.
Good. Is it still morning? Good morning. Before I get this started, are there people online? Nobody's online. With us to help answer technical questions is Jonathan Fitzhugh, who is our resident expert, literally a resident and an expert. He has been really helping staff through these processes. So we really appreciate his help. So if there are technical questions, we do have a little bit of help. So, let's see. What we wanted, what's that? Okay, so Crown Castle will be here. So we're going to go through, just as a reminder for everybody, the history, where this all started, how we got to where we are, and what we're in the midst of right now. So as we've heard a lot, the reason Cherry Hills Village is so far behind on cell coverage is our low-density residential zoning. The providers are upgrading all of their equipment throughout the nation in the higher density areas where where they can get a better return on investment. So we've heard for years, Cherry Hills is hard to work with, Cherry Hills is hard to work with. This is what all the providers, I believe, meant. It's not that our staff is hard to work with or our rules are too stringent. There's really, it doesn't make business sense. So that's why we are here today with having issues with our cell coverage. So City Council has heard for years and years, decades, that the lack of coverage is one of the main complaints we've heard from residents. That prompted the city to take further action. It showed up in the master plan. Here under the infrastructure facilities, it was a goal to coordinate with technology providers to have them improve the aesthetic appearance of cell towers. This doesn't speak to improving coverage. In the memo, there's a few, I think there's only 4 spots in the master plan where cell coverage shows up. This is the only goal related to cell coverage. There's some other talk in each of these, the infrastructure section and overall sections talking about cell coverage. So we began our journey in 2022 by hiring a consultant to perform a comprehensive study. This is when City Council decided, hey, we've heard this a lot, even though we're not in the cell coverage business. Let's see what we can do to listen to our residents and see if there is some options. So I've condensed the scope here. The main scope was to help the city articulate and document our vision. We knew what we were looking for, but we had to come up with a vision. So we had some scope of work that we could work on and figure out, okay, what are we really looking for? What's our vision as a city? So in the scope, they had to produce a comprehensive study that evaluates which options can be implemented to best meet the vision. And then the development of the study shall address how to best serve the cellular needs of our residents. So we hired HR Green in very early 2023 to perform this study. So the process to get to some different options that we could look at, we had the consultant looked at all the private cellular resources in the city. Where are the towers? Where's the fiber? And then we mapped all of that so we had a better idea of what's the infrastructure in the city. Then we had an open house. We brought to the residents, we didn't give them, here's any ideas. We brought the residents in to tell us, what are your issues? What are your problems? We didn't want to say, what do you want? Because as we know, if you don't have parameters, everybody wants the world. So we brought that in, and again, we kept hearing the same things. And we've got the survey down here from the citizens on the bottom of this, where most of our residents, 81%, said cell coverage is the bare minimum or not at all. 87% thought that the city should help facilitate better cellular service. So by us doing this study, we're doing, I think, what the residents have asked us, to try to facilitate better cellular service. But then with the question of, would you pay higher taxes? 37% said yes, and 32% said they need more information. So we've got a real mixed bag there. No major majority saying the city should be spending money on this. So the study had some key findings, and these are the key findings that the consultant found with their data collection. Strong correlation with the RF coverage maps and where the complaints about poor coverage are coming in the city. Consistently poor speed. So if you remember, we did a citizen survey where they had instructions on how to turn off their Wi-Fi so they could see exactly what their cellular service was, not their Wi-Fi coming from their home to their cell phone. So again, poor, once people turned off their Wi-Fi, very poor speed tests for cellular carriers. We saw significant dissatisfaction with the reliability, speed, and price. Not much we can do about the price since we don't provide cell service. 86% again said they wanted the city to be involved, and a minority were inclined to be taxed for that. So, based on all of the data, we got some goals that we came up with based on the collected data, the feedback from the public. We did the goal setting and vision with city council at the time. And so the goals that we came up are listed here. I won't go through all of those because from those goals, what we did was come up with the evaluation criteria that we're all familiar with. That we needed a solution that the carriers would support. It would establish a baseline minimum for all residents. It was economically feasible without tax increase, could be accomplished by the city on our own land that we have now without buying or leasing private property, and it utilized the minimum number of towers. So, and then I've blown up that criteria to the left there. These are the 10 major issues, our proposed solutions that we looked at. There were others. So we used that criteria to rank all of these solutions. And as you can see, the one 200-foot tower and the three 100-foot towers checked all the boxes. So the consultant came up with the recommended solution of the three 100-foot towers in the three parks, Woody Hollow, City Park, which is kitty corner here, and Three Pond Park. The plan and the solution with the three towers predicted that there would be a minimum baseline of coverage for all residents. It was economically feasible as a third party could own and operate the towers. In speaking to the providers, they would participate. The cost to have their equipment on three towers as opposed to more towers than that was something they were willing to participate in. And we didn't need to purchase any land with this solution. And again, only three towers. So this was the prediction, RF coverage with the three towers. And first I'll go here. So this is currently all the existing RF coverage with blue being bad, red, green being better, yellow. So it would go from this to this, predicted. So we came up with this solution, presented it to council, and we got a lot of resident feedback on the 100-foot towers. So council wanted to explore other solutions other than the 100-foot towers, even though we knew it might not meet some of our criteria. So we hired NTC, who had been working for H.R. Green during the process. We hired them separately to look at two things that residents had brought up, was small 5G C-band technology and satellites. Included in your packets, again, is that white paper and the PowerPoint that they gave to us on those issues. So it was, when we did that study, it showed a dramatic improvement, not like the 300-foot towers. If the DAS system, which is, I just drew a blank. John, what's distributed antenna system, which is currently what we have on the towers now. Looked at the small cell 5G C-band. In addition to upgrading the technology, the pole height would have to be raised to the maximum allowed within the code and preempted by federal regulations to ensure the project was feasible. This means we didn't have to change the code. It was a administrative approval if the poles don't exceed that height. So it made the process, again, implementable. 50 feet. So then our current efforts. So during that process when NTC was looking at stuff for us, Councilor McGuire put staff in contact with Dish Network And so we worked with Boost Mobile, who is a part of Dish Network, about, they were excited about building a new small cell network within our rights of ways, meeting those same criteria that our consultant came up with. This would have included 14 new towers spaced at a distance from the Crown Castle towers that would not require any public hearings. They have to be spaced more than 600 feet. If they're closer than 600 feet, then the application goes to a public hearing process.
I just want to say, sorry, Jay, not that, I don't want anyone to get the impression that we were in some way trying to come up with a process that cuts out public input. That was
No,
never our intention.
that was not the intention.
I think the important point is that if they met those criteria, they didn't need our approval.
Yes.
And they did, and that, I
Yes,
think that is a
it
very
wasn't,
important
we
fact.
were not trying to get around the public input. We wanted to work with the providers for something that they knew, they didn't have to go and get approval. So they knew it was implementable, and they were not designing a system and then having to go to a public hearing that may or may not be approved, where if they kept the towers within these parameters, that they knew they could get approval. So this was a 14-tower network. It would have been separate and possibly complementary to the existing Crown Castle network. And again, we were working with them. They kept telling us they were going to make a submittal, and then Boost sold a portion of its bandwidth to AT&T, and Boost immediately terminated the project. So that was the end of that. It was, we were very close, and that one fell through. So again, we were in contact with Crown Castle, and John helped a lot with that as our technical help for staff to know what we're talking about. So there are currently 12 DAS installments in Cherry Hills Village. Those towers, some of them are on utility poles, some are standalone. The poles would all be 50 foot in height, these same 12. They would be close to where they are. Some would need to be moved because they are between power lines or things like that, but they would be relatively close to where they currently are.
And just a question and clarification there, I think for everyone. So the intent, as I read it, was that these would be the canister towers. To me, this is significant, which is the tubes, basically, with a little bit bigger on the top, similar to the one that is over by the entrance to Glenmore Country Club.
Yeah, that is
opposed to the more unsightly ones that have the
arms coming out.
Antennas around it. John, is that correct as well?
Yes. That is the intent for that technology.
They would also probably have to be, in addition to, and in the cases where those towers, where those antennas are currently on utility poles, it would be a new pole in addition to the existing pole, because the utility pole can't
The
come down.
utility pole wouldn't go away. Their equipment would come off the utility pole,
Right, and-
and they would have a new small cell tower.
And is there a footprint around the tower also that would be necessary for equipment and so on, or?
There's a requirement for the maximum size. Is it 14 square feet? But there is,
Relatively small
to meet
footprint.
the small cell requirement in the right-of-way, it's a very small footprint.
But
And
I
Jay,
think what
that-
Doug's talking about, there's no requirement for either battery plant or gas generators with these, correct? Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
the big piece.
Yeah, no gas generator.
And the height of the current poles,
They're between 25 and 30 feet.
25, 30, so it'll be an extra.
On University, they're higher, though.
Some are up to 35, but not, I think there's a few. Most of them are at that 25, 30 feet.
There are two that are higher, the one right here.
Those are not part of this system.
Okay, but also the one right by the corner of the Kent dorms.
Kent has one, and we have one here that are at the 40, 45-foot height, but those are not part of this small cell network.
Those are not in the
Completely
right of way.
separate.
But it does give
That's
you
on private property.
a very good sense to look at it and
Yes.
get a perspective. That was my question, Susan, was what does 50 feet really look like?
Yeah.
So I've
Yeah.
seen 45 now.
Mayor, can I ask one other question about the
Sure.
50-foot? Is there a requirement that all three carriers, so that, I'm not going to get into the specifics right now, but if only two came, from an RF perspective, could you have less than 50-foot and still have the same coverage? Is the 50-foot being driven by the need to accommodate all three carriers, I guess is my question.
It's driven by that as well as the height gets better coverage.
But
And I-
would it be adequate with less than 50 and two carriers is my question.
Well, I think you're going to see, and as he moves forward, the
Yeah.
question of adequacy is
So-
whether even 50-foot is adequate.
50-foot will enable three providers. The business plan requires three providers participate.
That's Count Crassel's business.
Yes, because Crown Castle does not, they ask the providers to pay for all of the infrastructure.
And
So,
just real quick to clarify, if you do have questions for Crown Castle, they are joining us remotely. They are
well,
on the
but
calls.
that's more technical. than-
Yes, I'm just for council to understand
Yeah.
that that is an option.
So the way I interpret that is the approximately, what is it, $2.25 million to build the system, right? If it was just two providers, then that would be over $1 million each, and that T-Mobile and Verizon are not willing to do that? Has that discussion happened? Do we know?
I think we'll get to, I think this is one of the bullets on, so why don't you keep going down on this slide? I think he'll answer that
Well, I
question.
think it's an important question.
I think he's
Well,
going to answer it right here.
and so
on this slide.
Crown Castle believes they have two providers that will participate immediately. To make this work, they would need three providers. So 40, 50 feet is not the question here. It's, those two providers said they would throw in thirds. And so to make this work and feasible, the city would have to throw in $725,000.
But I think my question is, it's the overall amount that they're would be concerned about, right? Would AT&T and T-Mobile be willing to spend the $1.25 million necessary to install the system? Do you understand?
Yeah, according to Crown Castle, the deal is 50 feet, three providers, non-negotiable. So I don't know if they've talked two providers, 1.5 million, but to make this project go forward, Crown Castle has said they cannot and will not negotiate on the height to make it a feasible project.
Director, if I may, I want to go back a little bit to the discussion on the poles that the new poles that would have to be located are at different places throughout the village, correct?
Different places, very close to the current, because the power's there, the fiber's there. They may need to be moved 20, 30 feet, something, so they can get out of power lines and trees.
Okay. And does that then result in, 25, 30 feet? Does that mean that we're going to have any of these poles in, will they stay in backyards? Will they be in front yards? Will they be in side yards?
All of the above. They will be in city rights-of-ways, wherever those rights-of-ways fall on each property. On Quincy, it's some backyards. On University, it's some side yards. Few of them, let's go to this map here.
Well, and that's where I'm going is
So some of these, yes, would be in front.
On the one hand, they already have an
Yeah.
antenna in the general area, right?
Correct.
So there will, but yes, there will be
Yeah.
a new pole.
but some of these people can expect to see a new 50-foot pole where they did not already
Previously
have
had one.
one.
Yes.
And also, they may be in front yards, whereas all of them now are currently not in front yards. Or is
Are
that,
there any that are in a front yard? I don't know.
I would have to
The
look.
the one on Quincy, just south of the Country
yeah.
Club.
Over here. This
Yeah,
one
because that's
is-
on the north side of Quincy,
Okay,
and so
see.
those are homes facing
Yep.
Quincy to the south.
yeah.
Again, just to clarify, these are not actually located in their private property front yard.
yeah.
It's in the
Yeah.
right of way
Right-of-way.
adjacent to their front
Right.
yard.
I think the only one maybe in a front yard is potentially the one up on Dahlia. 'Cause
Yes,
those
I think
are
there's a
hedges.
third that we
Well, and
recognize as
so
well.
that one on Dahlia up north is
Noted.
not, there's 13 on this map. I couldn't get the 13th off. There's only 12 poles. The north one on Dahlia is in Denver. That one's not part of this, but the southern one on Dahlia would be in the front yard.
Okay, and then we're going to hear a little bit later on, but I think where Councilor Robinson was going is whether or not there might be alternatives. I mean, I understand that Crown Castle gave us this proposal sort of as, I think you phrased it as a take or leave it. But I guess my question is, are there other competitors to Crown Castle that if we sought an RFP out, that we could talk to, or is Crown Castle the game?
John?
Yeah.
I ask that because I don't know the answer.
Yeah, go ahead. John.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. John Fitzhugh. I'm a resident in Cherry Hills Farm. Been here since 2014. Just a 30-second background. I moved here from New York to join a company down in Colorado Springs that I ran for about 12 years. We built these poles that you are literally looking at. So my expertise came from building the infrastructure, designing infrastructure, sold to Crown Castle. I've since left the company, so just full disclosure, I have zero financial interest in the outcome, regardless of whose infrastructure gets used. To answer your question, there are absolutely other competitors who do this. The advantage of Crown is that they have an installed base. Every single one of these, they already have power, they already have fiber, they already have contracts with carriers. So if your goal is to get it done as economically and as fast as possible, I couldn't see anyone who's going to do it better than Crown, because they already have the carriers on the pole and they're literally saying, hey, we will migrate your contract that we already have in place from these small poles over to these bigger poles. All we have to do is hook it up or maybe trench a little bit more power and fiber. So the benefit that Crown brings to the table, I just can't see anyone competing, because they would have to bring brand new power and fiber from originating sources, trench it all the way into the city at wherever we want to. And Crown just made so much sense, which is part of what I was advising council on.
So, and while you're here, just let me say thank you so much. I cannot express how much we appreciate your expertise and your willingness to volunteer.
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
As a
you're
citizen,
volunteering,
I'm in the same boat
you
as
know, to
everyone
help
else.
with this. And really, I've heard so much about you. It's nice to meet you in person, and
nice
thanks
to
for
meet you
being
as
here
well.
today. Okay, so go ahead and continue with your presentation.
Okay, so then Crown Castle provided us their predictions. So these are the different frequencies. The top one's the 1900 megahertz. The bottom one's the 2100 megahertz. So this is T-Mobile, the two existing on the left, the proposed on the right. So you can see, comparing those side by side, what the improvements are.
Just one question there, is there, it would be their choice whether to do 1900 or 2100?
Well, they would do all of these, and then they would also, I don't want to speed, so this is the same thing
So
for
All
Verizon.
be done.
Yep, and then there currently is no 5G or C-band. This would be new. So there's no comparison to what was their old 5G, because if T-Mobile and Verizon both put in 5G or C-band, this would be the coverage that frequency got.
Can you go back one?
We should probably note, just for thoroughness' sake, that there are other facilities. You can see them easier on your maps that are in your packet. And John, I may have you describe these a little bit more, but the other facilities along Bellevue, down Broadway, those are not DAS systems, I believe. You know what I'm talking about? That have coverage that the maps don't reflect. Right?
Correct. You see those purple nuclear symbols going along the top, and it is also on the left. those are macro towers that are out of scope of this improvement, and they are not reflected in the coverage. So for instance, all those purple things along the top, you're not in those areas. Like I'm looking at the upper left of the Verizon LTE 2100 where it looks like it's all yellow. That wouldn't actually be yellow effectively because those purple towers, which are macro towers, are broadcasting down, and the coverage from those towers would be infilling that coverage. So this is not what the total coverage looks like. This is just what the incremental improvement from the small cells themselves and just those small cells would do.
And you're doing better than we could do to explain some of this stuff. Could you also just briefly talk about how it works for an individual user as it relates to the 1900 versus 2100 versus, how does that all, we aren't selecting 1900 on our phone, right? And so if you,
Yeah, so just a quick primer on the distributed antenna systems that Crown put in. I want to say it's 15, 20-year-old technology. Crown put in what's called remote radio heads that had a given set of frequencies that they could do, usually the lower bands. The higher, when I say lower bands, 700 megahertz, 1.1, 1900, the higher you go up, the less radius of coverage it will go, but the more throughput you get. It's just more power. So right now we're working on the old technology because that's what Crown made available. And then what the carriers did is they came and basically rented the spectrum. What small cells are is Crown is building a facility and the carriers are coming in with their own equipment using their own latest and greatest bands, which are the higher bands, the 1900, the 2100, as well as their 5G C-band, which again has a tremendous amount of capacity. And the reason for the 50 feet is to get above the tree line, to get that radius. Because yes, they could go down with fewer, but all of a sudden it's going to truncate in terms of the incremental benefit to the citizens. So we may not get the citizen response that we were hoping for.
Yeah, and
See,
I
that-
understood
well-
the diminishment, but the question is it still a worthy proposition if there's opposition to 50-foot towers, or only could be opposition if there's 2 out of 3 carriers and the city were to contribute. I get that. But, so that was the question. Is the itch still worth, the scratch worth the itch? However that thing goes.
Right.
Well, that's the problem. And by the way, it's a problem in terms of having somebody like me make a decision on this at this point, because I'm looking at these maps and I'm going, and that's what I'm looking at, okay? And go back, and don't go back, but I mean, if you go back to what we looked at when the study was first done, my understanding was those maps were, where you see the blue, that is what is happening within the village. That's not good, no matter where the towers are. And then when we put up the 3100 towers, all of a sudden we got green all over everywhere. These maps, as I understand, you're basically saying, hey, the red really wouldn't be red because these other towers, the nuclear symbols, I like that symbol, by the way, the nuclear symbols would have an impact on that. And so it's hard to get a grip on, with these maps, what is the improvement. Now, having said that, from a broad perspective, in terms of what isn't being covered in the village, which would go to the entire village solution, that is one of the criteria, you don't see that much improvement. You see some, I mean, you do see some, but you don't see that much. And particularly in terms of what it means for the village at large, essentially, hitting 95, 98% of the village. But again, it's based on those original ones with the blue might not have been accurate either. I mean, and it's a tough thing, but I'm coming away from this and I'm going, this isn't that big of an improvement, and it certainly isn't an improvement that satisfies the criteria that it's got to be a village-wide solution.
Well, let me also just say one thing too, and you made this point, John, and I want to make sure everybody understands it. The trade-off between lower frequency, having a broader spread, which you can see here in these maps, right? Look at on the right, just look at the proposed on the right-hand side, the coverage of 1900 megahertz versus 2100. 19 is lower frequency, and it does not have as high data rate, right? But it has a bigger spread. You go up in frequency, your spread comes in, but you get a higher data rate. And then when you look at the C-band ones, the spread comes in even more, but now you can like stream videos. And so to some extent, we need to keep in mind the problem we're trying to solve. You know, are we trying to make it so that everybody can watch their favorite TV show from the golf course? Or are we trying, right? And so that kind of gives some instance of, you know, are we really that concerned about 5G? I mean, it'd be great addition. It'd be great to have that coverage for people who are getting it, but I don't think that has been the primary objective of this effort
It
until this point.
hasn't been, and again, we could
Yeah.
change our mind, but the point was
Yeah.
it was to improve cell phone, telephone, verbal, voice
Yeah, and-
communication within the
And I
village.
was going to say something similar, Mayor, honestly, that it's not criticizing the criteria of the past. It's just we've learned more and you have new council members. But what does ubiquitous coverage mean? And, you know, I think it starts with a basic, you know, can someone make a 911 call from anywhere in the village, including the canal and the like? And does everyone have to be able to stream? You know, so I do think that's important. And, you know, what you tell RF engineers, again, is what they will design. So,
Right, and just to be clear, so the carriers want to put all their latest and greatest on these towers. And to Chris's question, he originally asked me that I realized I didn't address. So when your phone is going up to these towers, it's going to look for the strongest signal coming off. If it's 5G, you're going to be streaming videos. If you're another 200 feet away and that 5G cell degrades, it's going to look for the next highest, which was in this example, 2100. If you're a little bit further away, you'll probably pick up the 1900, and that's what your phone will use. And just to be clear, 1900, these are solid frequencies. These are not like, oh, I can only take a call. I mean, you're able to look at your email, you're able to send text messages. I mean, you're getting the latest and greatest of what the carriers have to offer. And there is one last point I wanted to make on the 50-foot that I was remiss. Because remember, the carriers are not only defraying the cost of the income. I mean, these are $100,000 systems per pole of equipment they're bringing in. My fear is if you say, hey, the city will, or the citizens will only allow a 40-foot versus a 50-foot, now all of a sudden they have to say, well, you're shutting down my radius of coverage. Now I'm only hitting, I'm making it up, 1,000 citizens per pole versus 2,000 citizens. That's not worth my investment of 100,000 per
and
pole.
I get the trade-offs.
Yeah,
Sure.
well, I mean, that was just a point that I failed to
And
make.
let me ask a question about that too. With the, so in a 50-foot tower, the way they are now, I understood that, you know, somebody goes on the top and they get the best, right? And then somebody goes below them at 10 feet below?
I think it's like there's two, the 1900 and the 21, the non-5G. Those are going to be what's called passive radios that are all going to feed up to the very top, which is one shared antenna. So the good news is for the non-5G frequencies, all the carriers are going to be broadcasting from the tippy top.
Okay, that is different than what we've heard. So thank you for that.
So it's the 5G. Those are what are called active antennas. They're integrated antenna radios. And those are the ones where first come, first serve. So the third carrier, which will be AT&T, who wants to do it, they just don't have the money now to do it. They'll probably be the third stack at like 35, 40 feet.
Which is kind of, and that was my question, was that now they're at where they are, where we currently are, right? I mean, by the time you come down that far, and so that was my question was, how is that any better? And so for AT&T people with 5G, it might not be, but that's okay, because that, as I said, that's not our.
They've got their other frequencies.
Yes, that's not our objective. So if you have AT&T streaming video while you're walking your dog is going to be right out.
So, and tell me if this is an appropriate time to ask this. So in looking at this, technology is moving rapidly. And so doing a little digging around satellite technology, asking the AI engines that are out there, how soon are we from full residential replacement technology by satellite in the suburbs of major cities? What I got back was that it's not that far off, that it is within 3 to 5 years, we will have full, robust satellite coverage. This is what ChatGPT was telling me. And then I went on further and researched what T-Mobile was saying, what AT&T was saying, what Verizon was saying. And they're all saying that the texting is available now, often, and I have that on my T-Mobile plan, and that by 27, 28, in many areas, there will be satellite coverage, and that by 2030, it'll be ubiquitous. That's what I was reading. I would love your thoughts on that, because in my mind, it has an impact on whether we want to spend this amount of money and put up these towers across our village if within a fairly short period of time, it's all going to be replaced by satellite. But if it's a much longer period and it's going to be a hybrid solution or something, that changes my calculus around it as well. So I would love your
And before you
thoughts
answer,
on
could I
that.
just add a little detail? Because my understanding is ubiquitous is coming, but it doesn't solve the physics of satellite to terrestrial communications, and it's not designed for, and maybe we're not, high density. So yes, it'll be ubiquitous, but it doesn't solve the physics, or still the physics of satellite communications. It's not the same.
So I can remember, I am not the super expert. We do have some Crown people who are probably more qualified, but I mean, there's a short answer of, remember that conversation we had of when you pull out your phone, you pull the strongest signal. When ubiquity comes, if these low Earth satellites do become the robust system, your phone, it is a stronger signal than what you're getting from existing poles, the new poles we're proposing. You're right. I mean, your phone will start communicating with those satellites because it's got a stronger signal, and therefore it would effectively replace these poles. Your other question of, well, when is that coming? I mean, that's everyone's unclear. I mean, we definitely know that Starlink is launching satellites left, right, and center, as well as other companies. I mean, they're firing satellites into space. I mean, we know them. They're going to put data centers. I mean, they're talking about data centers into space. So you can't deny that clearly is a future state. The question is when.
But is it part of the mosaic or replace? I'm not sure. That's what we should ask.
Yeah, that's
Town
what.
Council, because I don't think it
Well,
replaces.
they're on the call now. We haven't tested the audio with them, so
Great to hear from them. And also, how do
maybe
they
there's a chance
deal?
somebody can give it a shot.
Is this a 20-year lease? I mean, what would we do? Could there be shorter leases where, I mean, if that is ubiquitous technology, I think we'd want those towers out at some point as well, right? So maybe that's something big.
Well, that's definitely a Crown, because remember, we're not paying anything. The carriers are paying for these poles. The carriers are renting the poles for Crown.
And we don't have the right to tell them they have to get out.
Right,
We're
but
preempted.
We do have a decision about how long the lease is.
No, we're preempted.
Oh, they were preempted.
Yeah, it's not a lease. They get to use our right-of-way, period.
Yeah, okay.
But if the plant's not being used anymore, Doug, if that premise is right,
Yeah.
they're not going to maintain the O&M of them, right? So
Yeah.
if it really does shift to satellite, you got to assume the economics say they take the poles out of service because they don't want the ongoing O&M, right?
Exactly. So I'd love to hear Crown's, thoughts on satellite, how soon that is.
So, is it Aaron?
Anybody in
Wanna-
Crown want to answer the satellite question?
Oh, there we go.
You hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the discussion. Thanks for including us. Apologies we couldn't be there in person. We've got a number of folks from Crown who are not based here in Denver, and with the short notice and not sure of exactly specifically what time we would be presenting today, we appreciate your allowing us to do this virtually. I'll make some introductions and then hand it off to our brain trust from the Crown RF team. My name is Aaron Lamoureux. I am the Director of Sales for Crown, and what that means is I am primarily responsible for putting these deals together with the carriers, in this case AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon. I have with me today Matthew Duran. Matthew is the District Manager. He's based in Denver, as am I. He's accompanied by Jessica DiMaggio, who is our Supervisor for Network Permitting and Utilities. And then we've got Jerry and Gopi from the Crown RF team. I saw that we had put together the side-by-side comparison. There was some discussion on that. If you'd like us to walk through that, we're happy to do that. Or if you want to skip the presentation and just get right into kind of the meat and potatoes of any questions that counselor staff or others may have, we're happy to answer those.
I think that in looking, thank you for putting those side-by-side comparisons together. I think they're pretty self-explanatory, but did anybody have any questions about that? So seeing that, I think maybe if you could just jump
Just
to
one,
addressing,
maybe.
oh, wait, sorry. Yep.
Just one that, it's actually somebody asked it, could we see a more comprehensive map that shows the nuclear symbols with the improvements? I think that would be, I don't know if that's for Crown Castle or, but that would be helpful to understand what the coverage really will be for citizens.
I think that's been asked. Aaron, do you, there are some, on these drawings, there are some towers shown, the little nuclear symbol. My understanding is that those aren't your towers, but that's why they're not included. But could they be included, or to show the overall coverage in the village and not just from these 12 towers that we're talking about?
So for the towers that are not Crown Castles, we have to make some predictive analysis. We did request the key performance indicators and coverage from the carriers. Sometimes they're a little skeptical to share that. It's very proprietary information, and they're afraid of other carriers seeing individual performance. That being said, we did request, we have not received. I'll defer to Jerry on when we can make any additional modifications to what we've already provided. I think the goal here is just to show we've got 12 locations within Cherry Hills Village. There's 22 total locations within the overall system or network. Our goal today is to show you what it looks like in the existing environment on the existing sites, and the improvement that increasing these 12 sites by somewhere between 25 and 35 feet and shifting them somewhere between 6 and 60 feet, the benefit that would provide. In full disclosure, we have a contract amendment in front of Verizon, which we're currently negotiating. So I think they're furthest along. We're stuck with pricing with T-Mobile right now, but we are ever so slowly inching forward to get that approved, and then they would have a draft amendment. AT&T has elected to not participate at this time, but based on our experience in this market and with what they're currently broadcasting, it is only a matter of time before they come to the table. So there's a high degree of confidence that once we get moving, AT&T will join the party.
Yeah, you don't want to be the odd man out.
I'm sorry, was that a question?
I said, no, you just don't want to be the odd man out, so.
Exactly. So without further ado, I'll hand it off to Jerry Freeman, who manages our RF team.
Good morning, council members. I'm not sure what is on the screen, but I was.
Your picture.
If we can slide 3 on. It's the slide with all the frequencies and tables.
Okay, give us a minute. Your picture's on the screen at the moment.
I could share it as well.
Let's try that. If you could do that, that would be great. Thank you.
You see it now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I hope you're seeing this properly. I wanted to go over this once more, John. Thank you for going over capacity. The purpose of our current negotiations with T-Mo and Verizon is to make the upgrades to their wireless system in Cherry Hills. And that includes upgrading from 4G to 5G, and not just having the existing bands of 700, 1900, and 2100, but we would be adding bands 2500 and 3700 for 5G spectrum and technology to be deployed with T-Mobile and Verizon. If we're looking at a cup with liquid or water in it, really the cup is only a third full. with the existing frequencies that we have. So to make it fuller and to improve the network longer term, we really need to add 2500 and 3700 C-band. As mentioned earlier, there are data streams, texting. Some of those services would be better served with 5G C-band. And then it will reserve the existing 4G frequencies for calls, existing LTE calls, and other older technology that you would use on 4G. But really, adding 5G will improve the network for wireless longer term. And you don't see these coverage maps existing. So we presented the new coverage maps for 5G, and that really adds 2/3 more longer term improvements to the system in Cherry Hills. One last thing, we are deploying C-band and not millimeter wave, which is better because these lower frequencies of 2500 and 3700 serve a lot further than millimeter wave, which is up into 28 and 39 gig bands.
Great, thank you. I think, are there, I mean, I don't want to cut off any other presentations. Did you have anything else? Is it Jerry? Did you have anything else? Or Aaron, do you have, because we have an outstanding question about your thoughts about transition to potentially to all satellite versus tower-based cellular communications? Like direct satellite?
Can I
Well,
just speak?
yeah, I'm just going to have a different question.
comment on that.
In
So,
our view,
would love your
we're
view
going
on.
from ODAS remote equipment to Ericsson Nokia small cell. The small cell equipment is going to be in the node pole itself, and so it adds more capacity longer term, reduces congestion, and improves capacity. When we have satellites or we had DAS, those remotes, those radios cover the population at large without having much more capacity than having these radios at the 12 nodes in the pole itself and having various center lines for the different frequency bands and technology. So for longer term capacity, it's really best that we have these upgrades at the 12 nodes.
Can I ask a,
Yeah, Councilor Robinson.
another question just about aesthetics? And so I asked earlier.
From capacity, could I
okay.
just ask one follow-up question to that on satellites, if that's okay?
Sure.
The way I've sort of visualized it, tell me if this is the right way to think of it is.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, the way I think of it is today, the cellular system can be overwhelmed, Mother's Day syndrome, et cetera. Without these pole-based, it seems like it would not be a holiday or a disaster or the like. You could have more routine overwhelming of the system by not maintaining the poles with the satellite technology. Is that the right way to think of it? So you can have congestion now, but it's on extreme circumstances. If you eliminate the poles with the upcoming satellite strategy, that congestion would occur at lower levels, basically. Not just Mother's Day syndrome or a disaster that overwhelms the cell system. Am I thinking of it correctly? It could just happen on
satellite,
February 3rd, Robbie.
coverage would serve the whole city, but it has potential to be more congested than having the antennas and the radios at the 12 nodes specifically.
Yeah. So just to add to Jerry is that so satellite, what's happening is just kind of like a complement. That's not going to take away what's there in the cells, the traditional cell phone towers and all those small cells. Because the satellite right now, what it is like, because they're so far, the latency is very high and they cannot penetrate the buildings that well. So the idea of the satellite communication right now is just, it's just like a complement, like in, areas like forest or desert or example, those kind of areas to provide those basic signal coverage kind of. But in buildings, cities, high density areas, it's still going to be these small cells and cell phone towers because they provide the better data capability and they have the low latency, right? So that's why. So satellite is basically right now is just a complement. It's not, what I know is like it's not going to replace it. So it's just going to, that's what it is for satellite.
I would like to present it in another way also. When we have a big property, wireless signal travels like light. And so if we have a property and we have LED spotlight covering a particular area, when we add another room or want to serve more of the property and we want more light, it's similar to the antenna signal transmitting. We would need more spotlights, more lights to properly have visibility in a bigger property when you serve more users. It's the same thing. If we're serving more users in Cherry Hills, we would need the 12 nodes to transmit properly and cover a section of the city without having long-term congestion.
I think that answers my questions. So I have a question just about aesthetics, and I appreciate the what's up now because the proposed on the left is that's what we are envisioning, right? Is a up to 50-foot pole. It could be painted green or whatever color. Is this correct? And then also comment on what would be, would there be at the base of the pole, what equipment would be surrounding it?
So to explain this integrated pole we have on the left, we typically have power supply units, fiber DWDM at the bottom, and then we have bays for the carrier radios. So we would have bays for at least 2 Verizon radios, 2 T-Mobile radios. There'd be room for AT&T, a couple or 3 radios that they typically deploy. Currently on the wood poles, we may have a couple of center lines of panel antennas, and we have one, DAS remote that is shared between T-Mo and Verizon and covering, an area for that specific node. With the new integrated pole, the bays will be housing the Ericsson or Nokia small cell radios for each carrier. And then we would have room up here for C-band integrated air units. It's integrated antenna and radio for 5G, C-band for currently Verizon, but there'll be room for AT&T as well. And then we would have the passive antenna. Currently an Omni canister, they'll be shared with Verizon and T-Mo up at the top, leaving another room for future AT&T passive radio antenna as well.
So just confirming
and just as a note here on the map, this is the 5G C-band. We're showing the 12 nodes proposed C-band 5G coverage, which is not there today. Again, we only have the existing frequency bands for Verizon, 700, 1900, 2100. So this whole complete coverage is brand new. It's a third of the cup for long-term congestion relief. This is a macro here. So the macro will be serving 5G in the area to the north here where the churches are and along Covington Drive, while the rest of Cherry Hills here, different sections will be covered by the 12 nodes. The area here by Denver School is, this coverage looks better than what it is right now.
Yeah.
As you can see, the red spots on the left side of the map. In this map here, you can see that area is being covered. The area around the school, around the country club down here, there's more coverage.
So just a question back
what you saw there existing.
To the pole, go back one, the picture of the pole. So what I'm hearing is that all of the power supply and so on is embedded within the tube, that there are not freestanding boxes or outside of the pole. Is that correct? I'm not
That's
saying that well.
correct.
Yeah, that's correct.
The existing wood poles might have a side-mounted box housing
Yeah.
one remote. Now with this pole, we have the capacity to put, 6, 7 radio units inside, along with the antennas concealed in the top section.
So,
Counselor, just to clarify, there would still be a electric pedestal. Those are separate, the transformers. There just wouldn't be a cell provider cabinet next to that anymore.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
I
that's what
think
I'm trying to
it's
understand. Okay.
shown in this from the presentation from, I forget which meeting, but it has the photo of an it's not it's still a little bit different, but it's the same basic idea. I think there's a small unit next to it.
so, and again, this, I don't know if Crown Castle, our folks that are listening can address this or not. It may be a question for Verizon or T-Mobile, but I must have missed this diagram in the packet. But this one shows a lot more coverage than the previous ones. I mean, this one shows that we're almost, and then when you think about, the purple fill-ins out there. And so my question really goes to, and Dina, if we did this and Verizon and T-Mobile for Verizon and T-Mobile, and AT&T doesn't want to participate, I'm not concerned about them. I don't care about them. I don't view that as, that's their decision and it's our residents' decision. It looks to me like Verizon and T-Mobile almost does become a whole citywide solution. And so that's really my question. And again, you might not be able to answer it. It might be a Verizon and T-Mobile, but I mean saying, hey, and based on that, and based on those other nodes that are outside of there, will the people that are on Verizon and T-Mobile be able to move around the village and not have calls drop wherever they are and/or be able to get a signal in their house? Because it looks to me almost like that answer is yes, but I don't know, and that's, for me, that's the meat in the coconut. I got to tell you right now, that's what I'm interested in. And this one, that other map really looked like we were really close to being there.
Well, this one at 700 megahertz is there for Verizon.
Yeah,
And that's basic phone calls. That's not, right?
and that's what we.
That's our concern.
And so then that basically does it. I mean.
And if you go to the next slide, and this is what we were talking about and what John Fitzhugh was talking about, was that as you move up in frequency, the spread goes down a little bit. And so, a little bit higher frequency is not quite as good as the 700 megahertz, and a little higher is not quite as good as that. 5G somehow seems to get better. Yeah.
5G gets better because there's so much bandwidth on the spectrum. And so the higher bandwidth allows for, higher services, improved services, higher data streaming, higher data speeds.
Yeah, for me, it's really hard to answer Earl's question without knowing what the perimeter other towers are going to provide. So if the other providers won't give that because it's proprietary, can you make some really conservative assumptions about what the coverage, because it's not red in all of those areas. Right.
Well, but let me see if I can jump in. I'm sorry.
The service is pretty much green and yellow, which is what we're striving for. And then where the macros are, they're really close to where you have the edges of the yellow. So that's what we're striving for, is improve capacity long-term and better handoff between the small cells and the macro, as well as in between the small cells, because we cover this gap that was there previously in the area around Denver, Denver School and the country club here. So most of the service will be improved. The only caveat would be there's various attenuation into the homes and buildings. So in the deeper recesses of the homes, it's going to be tricky, but there's better handoff here between the nodes and with the adjacent macros.
It looks like the southwest corner is still a little.
Can you address the southwest corner? Is that served by the outlying blue towers?
Macro tower.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when they build that 85-foot tower over there by the fire station, what's that going to do?
Well, that's over here. though,
Well,
But it's on University.
help.
Yeah.
Mayor, can I jump in if you don't
Yeah.
mind? Members of Crown Castle, my name's Robert Eber. I'm one of the council members. Question that I have for you, I guess, in looking at the map that you have up right now, a couple of things jump out. Where you have kind of the black line is the western edge of our city, just to the west edge, sorry, on the left side. Right now, it looks like that's pretty tan colored. And I guess I'm trying to understand, does that mean it would not have coverage, or does that mean, at least under the 5G, that it doesn't have coverage, or are you saying it does have coverage, but by other carrier or other towers?
Yeah, I think that bottom right-hand corner, I've interpreted that to mean that it has very limited coverage, but I don't know what limited means. Does that mean you still get something but not much, or does that mean you get nothing?
There's a big tower
When you-
by the Walgreens there at Bellevue and Glenwood.
Yeah, I don't.
Well, but I
don't know
guess-
that- That's one of the biggest holes, that tower exists, and that's one of the biggest holes in our city as it is. So I'm
Well-
assuming it's not served by that tower.
So I want to, so basically the way I am reading this picture, and help me understand is that our very western edge of our city, we talked about the Kent School area and things like that, but the west edge doesn't have yellow or green. And then similarly, if you look on the right-hand side of our city, there's a diagonal line going, and then if you get to the top of that diagonal line, just to the left of the diagonal line and to the south, I guess I would say, of the horizontal line is an area that's pretty yellow. And I can't tell whether or not that means it's covered, because that area that's, at least on that one that's yellow, is one of our big areas right now that doesn't have any coverage, and we receive an awful lot of complaints from. So I'm trying to, and Mayor, I think what I'm trying to address here is the area in your neighborhood. Yeah. And I'm trying to understand whether or not this is going to generate improved coverage in that area under the horizontal line and to the west of the diagonal line, and then also to the west edge of the city. Because you've already kind of addressed the center core area of the city, I think.
I'm not sure if you can see this, this other map.
Yes.
slides I'm showing on the screen.
Yes, we can see that.
Okay, so these is an older map I had from Verizon. And so this is a prediction that they're showing for some of these macros west of the city. And so they do have coverage up to this edge of the line here. And that's at the green, light green, neg 100, neg 110, which is the level of our TAN. And so there will be handoff and coverage between the Verizon macros and our small cell nodes that we have proposed here. Verizon predicted it at a lower coverage before, because that's with the lower center lines, older technology when they presented this map. So when they predicted the small cell here, it's not as good as what we're showing you here for 5G on the right. But these were the previous coverage of the macro, and so these macros will hand off better with the small cell coverage we're presenting today.
So, and that's for Verizon. Is it similar then for the other carriers? Or
It's
T-Mobile
similar
for the?
T-Mobile as well. We'll have to find out where AT&T macros are in the area.
Okay. And then with respect to that area in the upper right corner with the diagonal line, It would be on
So
the,
right here on the left, we have Verizon's macros in the light blue sector pies or panel antenna symbols. And then that coverage there in the dark red will be propagating to hand off to this node on the upper northeast corner. And so there will be better handoff between this macro and this node coverage we're showing.
right, and I'm asking where your arrow is right now. Flip on the other side of the horizontal, to the south of the horizontal green line, immediately below where your arrow is. Keep going down, 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 out of the left, whoop, whoop, up, 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 up. Right there, whoa. Is that improved coverage from what we currently have then?
This is improved coverage. We now have better neg 100 yellow coverage here with the additional 5G band. 1900, 2100 might be weaker, but with 700 and 5G available on that node, that's what's going to serve that area.
Okay. I think the bottom line is you're telling me that there's improvement in that area. And I want to shift gears for just a minute and go to a sensitive area that we had an awful lot of public comment on, and that was the safety component of improved coverage. And we got an awful lot of that before, and from what I'm hearing is that these are small cells, but it sounds to me like you're going up in the intensity of the wave, or to provide that coverage with the newer technologies. And I need to be able to be responsive to say, we got you better coverage, but we're also not going to harm you, number one. And number two is related, well, I guess let's stop and just answer that one first.
Yeah, can I just add on, because that was my next question too as well, what the RF readings are with Cantenna technology down at the ground. It's really a public safety issue. Assume if there's tree trimmers or people working on the antenna, you're going to cut the power. So
Right,
first
and
question,
obviously they're required to operate within certain federal guidelines, but I guess, some information about,
what are the RF readings? If you took a Gauss meter to it, what would it say on the ground? That kind of thing.
Well, and I would also say it's not only from what is coming right there at I guess you said Gauss meter, but you mentioned, I think in talking to Councilor Robinson's description of the fact that the pole is going to have batteries and transformers inside and transmitters inside, are those at a level that, because they're lowered to the ground, are causing other health impacts that things up higher are not causing?
right, and let me just, please, in a second, I'd love to hear that answer as well, because obviously safety is our issue. Keep in mind that they don't need our permission. So, as long as they are within the federal standards, it's
They don't-
considered safe. I mean,
They don't need our permission, but under one of the scenarios we're looking at.
Yes.
They do need our money.
yes, that's fair. So, I'm sure this isn't the first time you've gotten this question. There are a lot of people who are concerned about the radiation from RF exposure, and so how do you explain that to people?
Well, and just before you go, I mean, you start, and it's a fair question. The point is it's not just, are there health impacts? It's like, what are the incremental health impacts in terms of where you are now versus where you are going, and how does that relate to what we know from a safety perspective? Because the answer, just a pure, simple one of, are there health impacts? The answer is yes. The question is are they material? Are they acceptable? How do they compare to where you currently are and what is currently going on?
There are health impacts.
Well,
I'd be
yeah.
careful about that statement. And also, maybe you can comment on, it was my understanding, and this is dangerous because it's from a long time ago, the higher the frequency, the less the purported health impacts. Low frequency, if you go back to the old brick phones, were much more of a problem than higher frequency.
So we've thrown out a lot of questions there. I would love your answer.
To address some EME concerns, we do have reports of our multi-carrier nodes and the signals transmitting out the antennas. We look at the distance of setback with the general public EME guidelines and limits. On the ground, we're very compliant, and the percentage is very low compared to the FCC limits. Where the intensity, to piggyback on somebody's question there, the intensity of the signals are at the antenna level. So for this proposed pole, they will be above 30 feet. So that area above 30 feet where we have antennas and the air units, that is where the intensity of the signal resides. And the concern is being, within 10 feet of that antenna, which we don't place these units where it would be that much of a concern. When, in such cases, if we're close to a home, then we reorient the antenna so they're not pointing into the home within 10 feet right in front of the antenna, if there is such a concern. But mostly the antennas are placed, we place them in such a way that where the antennas and the intensity of the signals are oriented, that it's not within general public reach. The ground level, 50 feet below is much less than the general public FCC guideline. And then also in front of the antenna, 50 feet, there's usually no buildings, no windows, no balconies where we would place these poles.
So to restate what I just heard you say, in fact, moving them higher actually decreases the exposure as opposed to, and that's offset by the fact that perhaps the antennas are stronger. Are the antennas stronger than the current DAS antennas? Yeah, the radio signal.
Yeah, with the C-band transmission, in addition to the older frequencies and having more radios, there is a bit more signal coming out. But again, we look at the EME concerns and make sure that the antennas are not within a distance that's of a concern.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. It is 5 minutes to noon. Do we have other questions for Crown Castle? Yes, Councilor Fisher.
Yeah, I have a question. This is probably for Aaron, kind of unrelated to some of the questions we've already asked. When you have a small cell tower or a tower like we have out here that is not in a right-of-way, what is the typical length of the lease?
The ground lease with the underlying lessor, I would have to defer to Jessica. My gut tells me we do a similar to what we would do with the carriers. We like them to run concurrently. Is the initial term is 10 years, followed generally by 4 5-year renewals.
Okay.
I don't know if that's the case at Kent School. I don't want to put Jessica on the spot, but I think in general that's how we structure these.
Yeah, Aaron, I believe that's correct. I will have to go and confirm looking at the lease to validate that. But I want to say we were through at least another remaining 5 years. But I'll confirm on that.
Okay, thank
Okay, thank you. Okay, if there are no other questions for Crown Castle, I would say thank you to all of you for being here and participating. I realize that, time is money, and this represents a lot of commitment to Cherry Hills Village. We really appreciate it, so thank you. So you guys can feel free to drop off. Do you have any final comments you'd like to make?
Not for me personally. I'll defer to the rest of the team, if anything.
Thank you for hearing us.
Okay, thank you. You guys enjoy the rest of your day.
I have a question for John.
Yeah.
Do you have other, I would like to get his,
No, I think what we're gonna, looking at our agenda, I think what I'd like to do is wrap up any questions that we have for John, then we can let him go. Then maybe perhaps we can adjourn or go into executive session and take our, I was gonna, not adjourn, recess. We go into executive session and take our lunches with us? Okay.
Can I also just real quickly mention, a lot of the discussion about they won't show us our maps or their information because of proprietary situations. And I'll defer to our city attorney, but we can have them submit that under seal because it's confidential business information protected under CORA, so that we could see it. We just can't disclose it to the public, but for helping us make a decision, I believe we can see that and ask for, and if that is a critical factor to our decision-making, we can see it. We just have to keep it under seal.
I'm not prepared to answer that question right now.
And I don't know that just seeing the data is what we would need. We would need somebody to interpret it and add it to the maps and all that, and so it would be more than just us. But, so you had a question for, let's
yeah,
let
John. So
John.
first of all, really appreciate you spending time on this and how fortunate we are to have somebody with your expertise that lives here. You live in Cherry Hills Farms, you said. So right across from you will be one of these 50-foot towers on University as you go down towards the Bellevue intersection. What is, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you for your personal recommendation to us as council, as a citizen of the village? Is that
So, yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and request that we hold off on that for the time being.
Oh, when can I ask him that question? Can I ask him that?
When we get into a public hearing, we asked him to come. We didn't ask members of the public to come. We asked him to come to provide technical advice. So at such time that council has any kind of public process, he will have every opportunity to come and give his opinion and recommendation to you as a resident. But today, he's really acting in sort of a assistant, volunteer capacity.
And maybe you're going to make the same comment to me, because I was going to make an observation. I mean, we were listening to all of this. And so can I say what
well, I don't know what you're going to say.
What I'm going to say is my first reaction when I saw this, up until we got into the meat of the thing, was this thing wasn't doing much. And I've changed my mind. It seems like it's doing a lot. And moreover, I think it's an easy thing, and you sit back, because we got right away on the west side, and it's like going, we really like your proposal, Crown Castle. We want 2 more towers put up right over there on the west side. Now, do that. And I think it fulfills the mission.
But it's my understanding they don't have 2 existing facilities over there, so they'd have to trench, brand new power, brand new fiber.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
But, and that could even be a phase 2 or something, but I think.
I'll just say, Jay and I were busy trying to look on screen at their maps. To the naked eye, they appeared to show a different picture than what, because we had it up.
Those are not the maps.
So we need to figure that out a little bit, but yes, that was encouraging. I think that would be encouraging. And I think, Councilor Robinson, to the city manager's point, one of the things that we want to be really careful about, as I said, we're so grateful to have Mr. Fitzhugh here. It is important to remember that he is not acting in any official capacity for the city. He has not been appointed to anything. We didn't create a citizens committee. And so he has been offering his very valuable expertise. But it's not as though he's acting as right, in an official capacity. So does anyone have any other questions for him before we thank him for his time? We really, really appreciate it.
Appreciate it, John.
So I think that I think the difference is in the packet didn't have the 5G slide.
Right.
I know.
That's the slide.
It did, yeah, it did. Well, not, maybe not
No,
in
it's a
that
whole different,
report,
it's
because
a whole different map.
that's a whole different
different-
We
report.
have not seen the maps that were up there today.
Exactly.
No, those that were up here today were,
Let's-
those were different maps.
We should go into executive session.
Yes.
We're getting too much discussion, I'm concerned.
Well, I mean, we're not, we can discuss this part in these presentations all we want, but, okay. So I think we have no more questions for you. And again, just reiterate our gratitude for you being here and spending so many hours with us today. Thank you. Okay, so, yeah, we'll get the motion.
Okay, I move to go into executive session pursuant to CRS Sections 24-6-4024B and 24-6-4024E for the purposes of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions and determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators regarding the requests of Crown Castle to place small cell and other infrastructure in the city's right-of-way and other properties. And I further move to adjourn the city council special meeting and return to the city council retreat at the conclusion of the executive session.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Counselor Heller?
Yes.
Counselor Eber?
Aye.
Counselor Holland?
Aye.
Counselor McGuire?
Aye.
Counselor Robinson? Yes. Counselor Fisher?
Aye.
All right, we are going to take 10 minutes to grab your lunch, and we'll convene the executive session in the conference room at 12:15.